chug, 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 chug,
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Wizard Staff. I'm your host, Guy.
And I'm Blake.
And we are two drunk novices who like to talk about EDH. Talk about children's card games. But we do like to talk about EDH too, a children's card game. So yes, welcome back. You can already tell I feel pretty intoxicated. That is exactly what I'm going to blame it on. And I'm going to move on from there. Alright, so if you haven't read the title yet, this is the Quarter 1 2023 updates. That's right, folks, we made it through 2022. Hell of a year for Commander, hell of a year for Magic. Now we're up. Got some big stuff for this first quarter, and it's only early February. That's not even a quarter.
Like 1 month in.
Yeah, it's kind of the company quarters, I suppose. So, like last time we did this, yeah. Anyway, so we're going to talk about some new notable cards from the premiere set. Phyrexia All will be one. We could talk about some notable reprints from those premieres, stuff like that. We got Dominaria Remastered and the RC announcement. So, yeah, quite a bit to talk about. Some good stuff.
You might be thinking, Blake, Guy, why aren't you doing just a normal set review? Well, fellow listener, we don't want to do like set reviews for every single set because we're going to get burnt out. So we're doing this instead. And we're just covering a whole bunch of things quickly. Yeah, we're doing that instead.
Yeah, it's so much easier to digest in this kind of way. Like, I don't know about you, Blake, but like, I get so burnt out from the Command Zone having like 5 set review videos in a row, and I'm just like, I like you guys and all, but this is so much.
Yeah.
And that's how we were doing it too for a bit. So, anyway, what are we drinking, Blake? Or what are you drinking?
Well, I went and found something new. This is called Holographic Memory. It is a triple India Pale Ale. It is 9.5%, which is very high.
I was about to say, I feel like when you say it, your normal is like between 6 and 7?
Yeah, so this is on the upper end of like the spectrum, I think, for drinking.
Yeah.
The reason I bought it was because the name of it is called Holographic Memory, and the label sticker on this can is holographic, like a card, and it's just very striking. Ooh. And I'm like, this is just like the card game I play. Like, it seems thematic. There's a connection there. I'm gonna buy this. Solid consumer logic right there. So I bought it.
I feel so ashamed of my reasoning, but I have to ask then, is it as good as Magic would taste, I suppose? If we love Magic, the taste would be good. So how good is the taste?
It's pretty thirst quenching. Love it.
Oh, okay, that's good. I feel like there's only like 1 or 2 beers where I can feel like that, because most of the time I feel like it's more sugar, but like, yeah.
I have 2 cans next to me, and I'm not sure I'm gonna even bother with the second can, because I'm like, okay.
Oh, nice.
What about you?
I have Snoop Dogg wine. It's Snoop Dogg's wine. It's not like he personally gave it to me, but it is his brand of wine. We got it from a neighbor who just dropped it off as like a Christmas gift, which was very nice of her. But I was just like, alright. I had a little bit previously, and you know what? It's good enough for another glass, so I guess I'll get through it. Yeah, pretty good. I don't listen to Snoop Dogg that much, so it is. I have had his wine more so.
Sounds good to me. Do you want to get started with the first major topic of the year?
Yes. So the first big thing kind of came and went. Dominaria Remastered. So this came out January 13th, 2023. This is basically a master set of 25 different sets, I believe, that all take apart on Dominaria. So you could have from the very first set to this most second recent. So not Dominaria United, just the Dominaria before. But holy cow, like, this was a good set for the beginning of the year. Just start off strong with all these reprints. Oh gosh. You had the Tudor cycle, the Enlightened, Mystical, Vampiric, Worldly, and Gamble, all included. At rare, except Vampiric, but that's great. Lyra Dawnbringer, Savine's Reclamation, that came out in a Commander product. Test of Endurance, its first reprint ever. Force of Will, High Tide, Mr. Gramora's first reprint in
like a non-secret layer and non-list.
Yes, that is how I believe they have been reprinted before. Last Chance, that's also, I believe, its first reprinting, or Overmaster, Sneak Attack, World Gorger, Arborea, which also its first reprint, and it's a world enchantment, I believe, which we don't see much of anymore. Birds of Paradise, Crop Rotation, Elvish Spirit Guide, Exploration, Sylvan Library, Crawl Space, Gauntlet of Power, Urza's Incubator, Dark Depths, Maze of If. Alright.
And there are other ones, but those are the most notable ones.
Did we even say Yawgmoth? Or Urza? Oh, okay. Yes, there they are. But there's so many. It's like, did I forget like some really good ones? It's like, holy cow! Like, you should be pleased with anything you can pull from this set. No complaints, really.
I was pretty satisfied. It was the classic situation of, all right, they reprinted a card. This is the time where like I wait for the set to kind of get opened and the prices go down on maybe older versions of cards, or at least these newest versions. And I just buy them then, because I didn't have a Yawgmoth Thran Physician for a long time, and I know, enough months go by since Modern Horizons, and I'm like, fuck, a foiled Yawgmoth is now like $70. And
oh yeah.
And now I'm just like, Yawgmoth Thran Physician got reprinted again? Okay, I'm not waiting any longer. I'm buying it again after it's dipped a couple bucks.
Oh yeah, like I had the same kind of thing where I went to go check and I was like, how much would it actually be to buy the original versus this new one? And the price is quite staggering. So I was like, huh, okay, yeah. Just get the new one.
Yeah. So, strong way to start off the year. And then we kind of moved into what I think everyone is currently talking about, but we're going to touch on briefly, which is Phyrexia, All Will Be One.
Wait, did you just say we're going to touch on this briefly?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I mean, relatively speaking,
I cannot tell if you are being sarcastic, because I'm like, there's so much to talk about.
I know, but we're trying to be like efficient, right?
Yes, you are right. We will be efficient.
That's a lie.
I'm excited.
All right. So, yeah.
Yes, Phyrexia All Will Be One. Sorry.
Oh gosh, where do you start? Like, I don't know, some of the mechanics. There's like, so first off, there's Flashback and Affinity. They are now deciduous. I think this was kind of a smaller bit of information that wasn't quite as obvious to more casual players, but it was confirmed in a Blogatog post by someone who asked, and Mark Rosewater, lead designer at Wizards of the Coast, pretty much said, Affinity is deciduous. We've decided to let a number of mechanics become deciduous. And then that was on Blogatog. And then there was like a Twitter post, and then Mark responded with, to save everyone some time, Flashback has become deciduous, smiley face. So there's your confirmed sources right there from the man himself. So starting with Phyrexia One Will Be All, Flashback and Affinity are deciduous, which is kind of exciting because they are very popular mechanics, and now we're going to see them much more often. I personally feel kind of surprised by this. I was not expecting it. I've seen Flashback multiple times while playing Commander, and it's always seemed balanced and well received by everyone who plays the mechanic. I am a little bit more surprised with Affinity, simply because it hasn't been an issue in Commander, but I know the affinity mechanic has been an issue for other formats in the past. So that kind of surprised me a little bit. What do you think, Guy?
Yes, I think they did learn their lesson, because when Affinity initially came out, it was in a set where it's like Affinity for artifacts. Also, we have artifact lands. So that just like doubles up on your mana pretty quickly, and they're like, okay, so in this environment, not great. But I think the ways that they've done it, where it's like Affinity for equipment, that's a lot better, because you're not going to have nearly as much equipment as you do just like normal amounts of artifacts, so it makes it a little harder, but like still, much more balanced. And if they're more specific in this sense, I think it'll be fine.
Right. So next up, we have something that was a little bit more obvious to the average player, which is Battle. It is apparently a new mechanic, and it was kind of hidden. So the new Atraxa card, Atraxa Grand Unifier, it's 3 green, white, blue, black. It's a 7/7 legendary creature, Phyrexian Angel, and I'm not going to read all of it, but part of the text in this new card mentions all these different card types, and in the list it includes Battle, and that's the first time we've ever seen it. And so everyone was like, what's this? Whoa, like, is it a translation typo? No, this is confirmed in English. Whoa, what's this? And so we're most likely going to see an explanation of this in the next set, or maybe the next 2 sets, because no other cards in this set say Battle. It is only this one card.
This reminds me a lot. I didn't play Magic at the time, but Maros talked about this. It reminds me of the time where they did like the Eye of Ugin, that land that makes your Eldrazi cost 2 less, but it was in a set with no Eldrazi, and it was like teased as like, what's an Eldrazi? And then next set, it's like Rise of the Eldrazi, and it's like, you teased us. So that's kind of what it feels like to me, that we will likely see Battle very soon as a new card type, which is exciting because, I mean, in the 6 years I've been playing Magic, there hasn't technically been a new card type.
It's been a while, I think. Gosh, because I'm thinking back to like Lurgoyf, when it was like, what's a Planeswalker? And then a little while later, the first Planeswalker came out.
I think Planeswalker might have been the most recent type. Tribal might have come before Planeswalker.
Yeah.
But those are the 2 that were not included in like Alpha and Beta.
Yeah. Speaking of which, Tribal was notably left off of the new Atraxa card. However, it is still considered a card type. But going forward, it seems like WotC is not going to be making any more Tribal cards. So they just chose to not include it in the list.
That could be. To me, it seems kind of like maybe there's just no Tribal cards in the set, or like any set going forward, so it's like not worth mentioning. Yeah,
true. And I did a super quick search of cards and looking at every single card that mentioned like card type, and like when you do that, you kind of have to list them. And as of the time of recording, none of those types of cards have been errataed to include Battle, but I'm assuming sometime in the future they will. Yeah, I think time will tell.
Yeah, it really will depend on what kind of like card it is, to be honest. I mean, I'm kind of thinking like, is it going to be world enchantment related? I don't know. So we'll see. But yeah, exciting stuff. But let's talk about, I guess then this is also the next new mechanic. Toxic. Ooh.
It's a new thing, but it's the same old thing. But slightly different.
But Guy and Blake, where is Infect or Poisonous? Okay, so there are 2 other podcasts you could listen to that go quite into depth about it. Command Zone and who is this other guy?
This is
Mana Curves
Mana Curves' podcast.
Yeah, so Unfortunately, Infect was left out of the set. It was originally in the set too, but it was scrapped once they removed -1/-1 counters from the set, which I know are not very popular among fans. So I think with Proliferate and Infect and all those, that WotC was just like, we're not going to do this. So we needed something new, something catchy, and so they made Toxic, which kind of reads as like, when it deals combat damage, instead of doing the power toughness, it will just deal the number associated with Toxic. So you could have like Toxic 1, Toxic 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 is the highest. But you also might be thinking, oh, Poisonous was a ability very similar to that. Why didn't they use that? Well, I learned 2 fun facts. 1, Poisonous is a triggered ability. Toxic is not, and that means there are less clicks for Arena, which it just makes it automatic. So like Mara kind of has talked about like streamlining some stuff for Arena, which is interesting now that they have to like take that into account as much.
When I read that, I was sort of blown away. I was like, you know what? I haven't heard this, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, which is just great. Not in a sarcastic way. I think making things easier is always the better thing to do. But so they did also consider using Poisonous, but another reason why they didn't use Poisonous was because Poisonous means that you eat something and it is poisonous to you, which is not the way that this is being used when attacked. That would be more like the term venomous. So Morrow said that if they had used the correct term, they might have considered keeping like venomous or like poisonous, but because of that, they just decided to make Toxic.
Okay. And that being said, I hope that like in like 5 years or so, they don't come up with some other new mechanic that's basically the same thing as Toxic and Poisonous and Infect, but something else. I hope that they just choose this one and stick with it if they are going to do more cards in the future.
Yes, I agree. I know that like Infect was a very divisive mechanic. You either loved it or you hated it. But yeah, so let's stick with Toxic and just all agree this is okay.
Guy, what are you talking about? Like, we need to reevaluate the number of poison counters that can be lethal in Commander. We must strike. What are you talking about?
We will get to that. I have a lot of opinions about that.
All right.
Yeah, okay. Next mechanic. Unless, do you have anything else you want to add to Toxic?
I guess I just add that I had to do a little bit of research before I realized that, like, all the white cards were always Toxic 1.
Oh, yes.
I was like, oh, I didn't realize that. And then, like, black is between Toxic 1 and 2. Green is Toxic 2 to 6. And that there were very deliberate design elements for the level of toxicity for various colors. And I didn't realize that at first. I was just like, oh, like, it's just whatever what the play design team felt was appropriate for the limited environment or whatever. That was my assumption, but I was wrong. And I read these notes and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool that the toxicity level is related to the color. Huh.
And it does kind of also relate to the play design, because play design is like the set when you draft. Because I know like the white is meant to go wide because like it's playing into like its tokens things. Green has like big creatures, and then like black just because like it's black.
Yeah. And there's no red, like there's not really any red or.
There is like a few blue, but I double checked and I am pretty sure there are no. There might be like 1 or 2 red creatures with Toxic.
It's mostly concentrated in white, black, and green, so Abzan.
Yes.
Color identity. Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. That's all I had to add to Toxic. We can move on.
Yeah. So we got 4 Mirrodin! Exclamation point.
Less exciting, even though there's an exclamation point.
Yeah, so this is just pretty simple too. It's similar to Living Weapon. Where you cast an equipment and you automatically create a creature token, and you attach the equipment to the creature token, so this like harkens back to Living Weapon. But the difference being that the creature you create is a rebel instead of a germ token, so you can keep more creatures around for also casting your equipment spells, which I thought was pretty cool. I like that.
Guy, are there any living weapon cards that you're afraid of in Commander?
Grafted Exoskeleton? Wait, no, that's not a living weapon.
Not.
That's just like, yeah. It almost seemed like it, just because like flavorfully it could be.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, hold on. Yes, maybe one. In a mono black deck, Lash Wraith. Because especially like I've used this for like infect decks, and it's just like you get +1/+1 for attaching this for all your swamps. And when again I had like Skittles, who's already like a 4/4, this just automatically makes him like a killing machine by the time I get everything out and going, because it's like 10, boom, and your equip cost is essentially 4 life. Like, I will not pay 2 mana. I will pay 4 life all the time. That is free real estate.
All right. I will say that I'm a little bit more afraid of living weapons. I agree with you. Lash Wraith is a little bit terrifying. I'm a little bit afraid of Cauldron Complete if you can ramp into it. Like, if you can cheat it out and circumvent the equip cost, this thing's like, oh, this thing hits hard. And then I'm a little bit afraid of Needle Cyst in equipment and artifact heavy decks. And then early in Commander, I don't see it as much anymore, but earlier in my Commander career, I saw Scythe Claw fairly regularly, and it would always just like half my life total and then do it again. And I'm like, well, shit, I'm like at 7 life. I'm gonna die next turn or within this rotation of the table. I'm gonna die. But those are the ones I'm afraid of. So I just kind of wanted to talk about that quick little tangent. We can move on.
All right. Yeah. Pretty sweet mechanic. Okay, so Phyrexian mana. This also makes a small comeback, which honestly, to me,
this blew my mind. I was like, whoa.
Yeah. What the fuck? But okay, so like okay, so hold on. What's Phyrexian mana? It's a mana. It has the Phyrexian mana symbol in it. That means you can either pay the color that is associated with it. So if it's blue Phyrexian, you can either pay a blue life or you pay 2 life. This has been considered one of the most broken like mechanics ever.
Yeah.
Like
ever. Like Storm.
Ever.
I'm just gonna keep saying ever.
Yes, like the fact that they were already bringing back, and they were considering bringing back Infect blew my mind. But like this, I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But it makes sense because it does tie into the set because it's the only mechanic that actually says Phyrexia. But the other good thing about it is that it is only associated with activated abilities. It is not on any mana value except for the completed Planeswalkers.
Right.
And that already gives it more of a negative connotation or negative effect already, in addition to already having to pay life. So it is somewhat balanced in that way.
I agree. When I heard that there was the return of Phyrexian mana, I was really surprised because any long-time player often knows like it's one of the most busted mechanics ever. How could WotC possibly do this? And then restricting it to abilities, activated abilities, and to the Planeswalker cycle, like it actually really makes cards less likely to be busted. I'm not going to say it's going to fully prevent these cards from being busted. I don't know what future completed Planeswalker WotC has in store in the future. Maybe they're going to complete Oko and it's going to be even more broken. But it gives a better chance of not repeating the mistakes of their past.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. They have learned. And thankfully.
Yeah. Birthing Pod, fucking Gitaxian Probe, fucking Mental Misstep, God. Noxious Revival, Phyrexian Metamorph.
Oh, such good cards. I mean, but such good cards. And Crick, I guess.
Yeah.
But that was a little different.
That one's a newer one, and I mean, that being said, it's arguably one of the strongest mono black commanders.
Yes.
And it's great in the 99 of other decks that really care about like reanimator strategies. I've lost to it as part of a combo piece many a times.
Oh yeah, card's great. Card slaps.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, last mechanic though, we got Proliferate, but this is another returning mechanic. So another returning mechanic, but probably the most popular of the mechanics returning, just because I know players like it a lot. With good reason. So, to proliferate means to add a type of counter to any number of permanents and or players there are. So you can double up on your +1/+1 counters, loyalty counters, infect counters, I guess ability counters if you want, shield counters, -1/-1 counters. Am I missing any?
There's a whole bunch of types of counters. Like every set or two comes out with some new type of counter, so don't stress about trying to list all of them right here and now, because you'll be like blue in the face.
Yeah, I mean, Proliferate would also work on like sagas, which I feel like that's kind of the biggest plus for them, right?
Yeah, that's true. Sagas do use counters.
And sagas are becoming more popular too, and I feel like,
well, they're like WotC is designing more of them in more sets.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think the average commander player is aware of Proliferate just because Atraxa, Praetor's Voice, the original Atraxa.
Oh, you're right.
At least when you look at EDH Rec and you go to their like past 2 years chart, Atraxa is still the #1 most popular commander under that criteria, with over 16,000 decks. Now take that number with a grain of salt, but it hints the grain of truth, which is Atraxa is a really fucking popular commander, just straight up.
Yeah, you are absolutely correct on that.
Mm-hmm. There's tons of ways to build her, so people have built her in tons of different ways.
Yeah.
And she says, as part of her text at the beginning of your end step, proliferate.
She's pretty sweet.
I don't think that this new Atraxa is going to be as popular, but I think that's fine.
I think so too, and it's going to be one of the cards we talk about, but I think just because people are so thirsty for Atraxa anyways, like this one is just automatically going to get a lot of bonus points. Like the most popular commander of all time makes a return. Yeah, it's not a bad card.
Yeah, I feel like the new Atraxa got like thicker. Anyways, moving on.
Okay. All right, so time to talk about cards we care about, and holy shit, we got some cards. Going to mention notable reprints real quick, but Phyrexian Arena, Phyrexian Obliterator, those are some pretty good reprints.
When's the last time, okay, be honest, guy. When's the last time you saw Phyrexian Obliterator in a commander deck?
Oh, okay, wait. Well, no, I have never seen it in a commander deck. Like, but it's a good card. Have you ever seen it in a deck? Or does Park play with it, actually?
So there was this one time Park was kind of experimenting with it, and in his reanimator deck, and he reanimated it at instant speed and used it to block something of mine, and I had to like sacrifice a whole bunch of shit. And I cried.
Oh god, okay. I mean, it's a good card, but like I don't see it that often in Commander decks.
Yeah, it's not as good in Commander as it has been in other formats, which is fine. But I was just kind of like funny where like you included it in our reprints list, but I was the one with the actual story.
Yeah. I guess like I remember being excited about it when I first was building a mono black deck. I was like, yes, Phyrexian's in its name, and like get the Phyrexians are about this. And I remember because I sent you the list, and you specifically called out like, why do you need this card?
Oh yeah, you remember that better than I do.
Yes, I made a deck list, and you said you would critique it, and then you kind of like put it into like, take this out. This is not good in this deck. And I was like, but Blake, it's worth money, so it must be good. But no, I totally agree. I don't think it's like a staple in Commander by any means, but I like it.
That's so funny.
I do like the old art a lot more.
Do you remember why you put it in the original list then?
Yeah, because it was a Phyrexian, and it was expensive, good card.
So it must be good.
For a different format. Yeah, exactly. I was stupid. Do I need to be more clear?
All right. You're good.
I didn't buy it.
You can buy it now. It's reprinted. It's low cost.
Yeah. Okay. But alright. The Praetor cycle is now complete. Blake, would you like to do the honors of reading the best card ever?
Okay. Yes, this is Elish Norn, Mother of Machines, 4 and a white. It's a legendary creature, Phyrexian Praetor. It's a 4/7, so big butt, with vigilance. So that's pretty interesting. But wait, there's more. If a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So it's like Panharmonicon. But wait, there's more. Permanents entering the battlefield don't cause abilities of permanents your opponents control to trigger. So it's sort of like Torpor Orb, but stops more than just creatures from ETB triggers. So both these effects are like quote-unquote generically strong in the Commander format. There's a whole lot to say about this. Guy, I kind of want to let you talk about it more though, because you're the one who actually has a mono white deck, and you're kind of have to be a bit more skeptical as to whether or not you would include this card in said mono white deck, or maybe you'll build this as your commander.
For me, I mean, I could totally see people building this as a commander, like, for sure.
But why?
I like it. Well, okay, because I know that it's on this list in particular because I feel like it's going to be a very popular commander, but I am also, like, just 99 love, but, like, yeah. Okay, so my point of perspective, saying my point of perspective is it's already just, like, a good 99 card. But it'll be a great commander, too. So, anyway, in mono white, there are a ton of good ETB effects. You got the original Ranger Captain, you got Recruiter of the Guard, you got Solitude, Stoneforge Mystic, Felder Guardian, Flicker Wisp, Oblivion Ring, Sun Titan, Mentor of the Meek. And I know the list could go on. Like, Oblivion Ring, there are a lot of Oblivion Ring-like effects, so that just adds on.
Mm-hmm.
So anything that enters the battlefield, you get 2 of. Already great. So, yeah. But for 5 mana, like, that's fine. To me, the bigger thing, I think, is the stopping your opponents at all. Like, that's even crazier, I think.
You think so?
I think so. That's the more devastating part, I think. Because, yeah, that just stops 3 people. Yeah, it's a pretty... Because, like, the other thing, like, when you compare, I guess, other than Jin Cataxius, all the others, like, halved, or, like, kind of just hindered you in another way, but this one's just, like, full stop, like, on a very common thing to do. You know? It's not like it doesn't stop the first ETB trigger, like, kind of like Jin Cataxius counters the first spell.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a full stop. But in this way, it's like every ETB effect is just down.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Okay. Yeah. So that's why that's personally why I'm including it. I think like that part is just going to be so backbreaking very quickly. It's great.
I agree that this is a strong like white card. Whether I want to encourage people to build it for their mono white commander decks, because mono white in the commander format is still needing help to get up to speed with all the other colors. And I do want to encourage people to play this in the 99. No, I do not think it's so powerful that it needs to be banned. There was a whole bunch of drama with like Sheldon Menery's article talking about this card, and I don't know, I just don't think it's worth talking about it. It's a fine card. It's like, it's a strong effect, and it's a 5-drop. It's fine. It's a creature. I feel like I have a little bit of perspective on this card in regards to its last ability, the one that stops permanents from entering the battlefield and not causing any triggers, because I've played a Phage the Untouchable commander deck. And one of the main cards in that deck that you want to get out pretty much every single game is Torpor Orb. And Torpor Orb pretty much stops creatures entering the battlefield from triggering anything. And so that's kind of what everyone's comparing that last ability to. And so I've played that last ability like a whole bunch of times, and it doesn't come up every Commander game, but it comes up pretty frequently, almost every game. And it always just sort of happens to be where my opponents go, oh crap, I can't do what I was planning to do. Like, that kind of screws up my sequencing, and that kind of screws up the plans that I made. But it doesn't really stop them from, like, playing the game, like certain other cards, like Iona Shield of Emeria. Like, it just sort of, like, hinders them, like a stacks piece, which is what this card is. And
yeah.
So, at least on that dimension, where I feel like I can speak about this card on its final ability, it's fine. And that's what I'll say.
All right. It is okay. So I guess I do kind of want to get into, and I want to get your opinions among all the 5 new reiterations of the Praetors. So we have now completed the cycle with Vorinclex on Kaldheim, Jin Gitaxias on Neon Dynasty, Urbask, New Capenna, Shieldred on Dominaria, and now Elish Norn. Who would you say is the best of these 5?
That's a big question. Wow. Fuck, I wasn't ready for this.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's actually kind of tough. I mean, if you ask the average player, they'd probably say Elish Norn, just because that's the only card of the cycle with discourse to be like, it should be banned. Let's see. The new Jin Gitaxias is pretty high on the salt score in terms of the EDH Rec salt score.
Mm-hmm.
In a vacuum, if you had a gun to my head, if I had to choose one of the 5, I would probably say Shieldred, because it's the one that costs the least at 4 mana, and it punishes a game mechanic that pretty much every single Commander deck uses, which is drawing cards. So that's going to be my answer.
You nailed it, because I 100% agree with you that of these, Shieldred definitely still is probably the best one.
Yeah, it only costs 4 mana, and it punishes pretty much every single deck in the format.
It doesn't even have to punish you for, like, having a lot of card draw, because, like, you draw cards naturally in the game.
It's part of the draw step.
Yeah, it's the only one of these that does not require your opponent to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, like, Urbrask is kind of the same, but, like, it's not nearly as good of an effect.
I think Urbrask is the one I'm the least worried about. I'll say that.
Probably. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, a Vorinclex is also, I think, it's the most situational, because it's another doubling season, and not all green decks want another doubling season. A good number do.
Now, here's a question for you, Guy. So, the original Praetors could be described as EDH, Haymaker, Battlecruiser Magic, and this new cycle of the Praetors is arguably, like, slightly lower in mana cost, and they're half enabler, half stacks piece. How do you feel about that description? Do you feel like it's accurate? Because I've seen that crop up online as the description as a fault against this new cycle, and I kind of wanted your thoughts on whether you thought that was an accurate analysis, and if you think it's justified as these being bad cards.
I'm glad you asked me that question, because I do have an answer. Oh. I think that's not the best criticism, because the original cycle is also very stacksy in itself. I feel like people don't quite see it that way, but it is. You got Elish Norn pumping creatures and turning your cards, decreasing the value of the other cards that aren't yours. Jin Gitaxias basically says you have no cards. Shieldred is Shieldred's sacrifice.
Yeah, Shieldred is basically the old Shieldred is like your opponents have no creatures if they aren't a creature heavy deck.
Yeah. Urbrask, your creatures come in tapped. That's pretty stacksy. Not all your lands will untap the next turn, so stacksy. So I already thought the original cycle was a stacks-centered cycle, so this totally feels in theme to me, in my opinion, I guess.
I agree. I feel like people forget about the downside, the inhibiting nature of the original Praetors. Somehow.
Yeah.
Somehow.
It's only yeah.
I mean, I say that, but the original Vorinclex is still voted one of the most saltiest cards in the format. So kind of take that with a grain of salt. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't want to rank all 10 of them. That would be hard.
We're not going to get down that rabbit hole right now.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just move on. Okay, so the next big card we're going to talk about is Atraxa, Grand Unifier. So I'll read it all. 3 green, white, blue, black, legendary creature, Phyrexian Angel. It's got its 4 original key abilities: Flying, Vigilance, Step, Touch, Lifelink. It's a 7/7, and when Atraxa enters the battlefield, reveal the top 10 cards of your library. For each card type, you may put a card type of that type from among the revealed cards into your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So it's a lot of mana, 3 more than the original, and its effect is strong, but I don't know, just the amount of mana it costs, worries me. And and also being so diverse in color. It's almost like Ur-Dragon to me. I love that card, but it is a pain to cast.
Yeah. I don't know. I think if you can just ramp up, get this out, play cheap clone effects, even if they die, you still get the triggers, and flicker, cheap flicker effects, it's just value town.
Oh yeah.
That being said, I just play the new Elishnorn, and this doesn't even enter the battlefield and trigger.
Oh yeah. Sucks to suck. Though, you could, I guess if you're playing against Elishnorn, yeah, that would prohibit you. But you could also totally throw Atraxa into this deck, and then it's
double
value count.
So it's
the 20 cards. Yeah. Win the game.
That's true.
So yeah, but it's the nice thing, I think, too. So original Atraxa proliferate is a pretty diverse thing you can build upon. You got Planeswalkers, you could have Infect, you could have Sagas. There's multiple ways to build it. +1/+1 counters. But this one also, I feel just opens you up to however you want to win. As long as red's not included, you could probably find a way, because you just can draw all the cards you need.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Let's move on to the Dominus cycle.
Is that how you say it? Dominus? Dominus?
I pretty confidently said that, but you might be right. That sounds actually more right. I don't know. Dominus?
I mean, nobody
Would I
knows how
say
to
Dominus?
pronounce Magic the Gathering card names. It's fine.
Yeah, okay. Moving on. So, this is a cycle of 5 Phyrexian gods. However, they are listed as Phyrexian horrors. But they are gods in the way that there is a way to get them indestructible, and they are mythic creatures. But they all double up on something in their colors. So, for example, Mondrak, Glory, Dominus. 2 white legendary creature, Phyrexian horror. If 1 or more tokens would be created under your control, twice that many of those tokens are created instead. And then it has an activated ability with 1 white Phyrexian, sacrifice 2 other artifacts and or creatures, and then put an indestructible counter on this card. So yeah, there's a whole cycle of them. So white doubles all tokens, so treasure, creatures, clues, etc. Blue doubles on proliferation, black doubles on death triggers, red, my all-time favorite, double non-combat damage. Holy shit. And then green, double power toughness on combat. So all good effects.
They are. I was really surprised where, each set has a cycle, and oftentimes, the whole cycle is kind of mediocre. Sometimes, half the cycle is good, half the cycle's bad. But every once in a while, you get a set like this, where the entire cycle is actually pretty good. Not even one of these is a dud. like most, like a lot of the time, like the entire cycle, except for like maybe red or maybe the green one, are like good. You know what I mean? But all of these are solid. Like the white one, that's basically like an anointed possession effect, and that's a highly desired effect in that color identity of white. And so I feel like this is going to be worth money. And I mean, I'm not going to justify each and every one of them, but like the red one just doubles certain types of damage. That's pretty common in the commander format, and it's for such a low rate at 4 mana. Blue one double proliferates, not just like proliferate additional time. This one is actually a hard double. Like, I think that's the thing. It's that all of these are a hard double, whereas most modern Wizards of the Coast design has moved towards like triggers an additional time. So it's not true double, but these ones actually are. And I think because of that reason, and they're so mana efficient, and because of their activated ability of essentially 1 mana, because let's be real, like in a 40, when your starting life total is 40, you can afford to lose 4 life pretty easily. The fact that they give themselves indestructible for just like 1 mana, like, hell yeah, like that's really strong.
Oh yeah. And the other nice, so like, I agree, because double is way better than an additional time, because double stacks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have 2 double triggers, that's actually quadruple. And then you add another one, that's 8 times. Then you go 16. Like, it can just get out of hand the more that you have types of these effects. So, like, oh yeah. Solid cards.
Yeah, I remember
All around.
I remember when I played an Aurelia, not Aurelia the War Leader, Gisela the one that doubles damage to your opponents and halves damage to you. I'd play a bunch of like double damage to your opponents, and I played a whole bunch of those, and like by the time I had like 3 of them, everyone was just like, all right, we don't like this group slug deck, like let's just kill him. Like he's already been dealing damage, and I couldn't ever politic my way out of it, so I'd always just die first, and that's why I took the deck apart.
Yeah.
But the point of that story is to emphasize, like, when you double, and then double again, and then double again, and then double again, it gets pretty out of hand pretty quick. As you said.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, pretty solid cards. Either they could be commanders, all of them could be commanders, or they could all also just be 99 cards, which I think is also what's, like, great about them.
I think one other thing I like about their design is, like, they're kind of reversed original Myojins, where, like, these Phyrexian cards are gaining indestructible, whereas the original Myojin cycle like would lose indestructible in order to like have some sort of amazing effect, and I just find that sort of interesting design.
Yeah.
I feel like you kind of have to have been playing Commander for a really long time to even fucking remember the original Myojins, but they're still cool. Okay,
you want to move on to the next card?
Sure thing. Ixhel, I think that's how you say it. Ixhel, scion of Atraxa. So this is Atraxa's daughter, for lack of a better term. That's probably not canonically correct. It is 1 white, black, green. So it's an Abzan commander. It's a legendary creature, Phyrexian Angel, 2/5, with flying, vigilance, and toxic 2. And it's corrupted, like the keyword ability, that says at the beginning of your end step, each opponent who has 3 or more poison counters exiles the top card from their library, face down. You may look at and play those cards for as long as they remain exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. So it's sort of like you're playing your opponent's decks, but in a fun way. We've seen lots of commanders that allow you to play your opponent's decks that are annoying, and everyone automatically like kills you first, generally speaking, because it's kind of an annoying mechanic. But I feel like this does it flavorfully and in a way that's not annoying, and you can totally do it.
Yeah, I agree. To me, what was kind of, I guess, like, surprising, because, like, I expected a card like this, I think, but the fact that this is also, like, the face commander of a deck, and it's centered around poison, that's not something I would have ever thought in my wildest dreams
that would ever happen.
we would ever get.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it did, and this set has been full of surprises. So, but it makes sense why, it's one of the more popular mechanics. But they did it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do like how Corrupted now kind of also gives you better incentive, because like getting from 0 to 10, that is a little hard in playing from personal experience. But getting that like 2 to 3, and then being able to like have an extra like effect or like pumped up for what you're trying to do in the game feels like a great addition for any decks that do care about poison.
Yeah, I agree with that. This is going to be kind of a pain if you still are playing over webcam.
Oh yes. Don't do that.
Guy, I'm gonna play my opposition agent in every single one of my webcam games, and you can't stop me.
I mean, this is worse in that regard. But yeah, opposition. I feel like that's why. I feel like the fact that opposition agent is kind of a pain to play over webcam Magic is why I haven't seen it more often.
Do you remember when those cards were first released, like opposition agent and Hullbreaker Horror, and everyone was like, "Which one's more broken?" I think we figured that out.
Yeah, it was kind of that was quick.
Ah, good
Short-lived.
times, good times.
I want to go back to those times. Okay, so now let's move on to the 99. We got this broken down by color, so we'll start with Skrell, Defector Might, 1 white mana, legendary artifact creature, Phyrexian Might, toxic 1, can't block, and then 1 Phyrexian mana, tap, choose a color, another target creature you control gains toxic 1 and hexproof from that color until end of turn. It can't be blocked by that creature. It can't be blocked by creatures of that color this turn. So you're probably wondering, like, but why are you guys including this in the 99? It's a legendary creature. Well, I don't know if you've ever played against a mono white deck, but I'm sure you are familiar with Mother of Runes.
Yes.
One of the most arguably popular mono white cards. And yeah, so this is just another one of those effects when we already have, like, Giver of Runes. So this is the third iteration of a really good effect.
That's pretty much the perfect way to describe it. Guy, what do you think? Is this going to be played as a commander more, or is this going to be played in the 99 more? What do you think?
Definitely the 99. I love this card.
I do feel like people really did love this card just because of the cute little teeth and just like, it's just a cute little guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I like him.
Mm-hmm. I think the one little side note I have is that, as far as I understand, Wizards of the Coast is trying to move away from protection. And so instead, it is the wording of this card is like, oh, you give it hexproof, and then it can't be blocked by creatures of the color that's chosen. Because, like, let's be real, protection is kind of a hard, I don't want to say mechanic, what's the right term? Like, protection is a hard, it's not a keyword, but protection is a hard ability to remember all that protection actually encompasses. And so WotC's moving away from that, and so that's why the wording of this card is the way that it is.
Yeah. I think they tried to do a little protection, and I mean, how confident are you in explaining protection, if we're being honest?
I could if I wasn't this drunk.
That's kind of how I feel. Like, I might need a reminder on, like, everything, because it's a lot. But then it's also, like, some things aren't always intuitive about it. It is definitely, one of the more nuanced things that are on cards.
Alright, so to oversimplify things, protection is basically an evergreen keyword ability that grants several different effects to a permanent or a player, and the best way to remember it is debt, and that's DEBT, like credit card debt. So there's damaged by, there's enchanted, equipped, or fortified, there's blocked by, and there's targeted by. So if something has protection, it can't be damaged, enchanted, equipped, blocked, targeted. Those are the things. And that's really hard to remember, let's be real. And so WotC's moving away from that.
I mean, you explained it pretty well right there.
Yeah, I had to take a sec to compose myself.
No worries. Yeah, but I think that's great. That I have heard that before, but like, it just doesn't come up. Well, I'm gonna have to now remember that like phrase.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So okay, why don't we move on to the next card?
So the next card we have is Clever Concealment. It is 2 white for an instant with Convoke. So remember, your creatures can help cast this spell. Each creature you tap while casting this spell pays for 1 or 1 mana of that creature's color. And then, so you can get it down to as little as white. You can bring it from a 4 mana value spell to a 2 mana value spell.
You could pay it all. If the creature is white, you can tap for a white mana ability.
Oh, you're right. Thanks for stopping me there. I almost made a mistake. So, even better. So what does this card actually
Yeah.
What does this card actually do? So any number of target non-land permanents you control phase out. Treat them and anything attached to them as though they didn't exist until your next turn. So phasing is a little bit complicated, but not really. It's like the reminder text says, just treat it like it doesn't exist. Like, I don't know, put a piece of paper over it for a turn. All right, so just so it makes it easier for you. It basically like goes away, can't be interacted with on any dimension whatsoever, like unless you, the player, lose the game. That's pretty much the only way to stop it. And so this is actually a pretty strong card because it's at instant speed. It's really easy to pay the cost for it. It's essentially protecting potentially your entire board state, besides for your lands, for like the turn it's activated. The closest comparison to this card is arguably Teferi's Protection. And there's been a whole bunch of discussion and analysis about Teferi's Protection over the years in Commander. I'm not going to open up that can of worms. I would almost argue that this card is better because it's easier to cast and because you get to choose exactly what you want to phase out and what you want to leave on the battlefield. Because especially if you're a mono white deck, you might want to leave certain stacksy effects on the board while you phase out other things. And whereas the downside of like Teferi's Protection is like you just completely phase out everything and like you're helpless as your opponents like advance their board states or do some really fucked up shit, and then by the time you come back in, they're ready to kill you at instant speed and you like never get priority again.
Yeah, this card's awesome. This set has been a lot of good hits. Like, mono white is doing well.
Yeah, I like this card. It's not, like you could also kind of compare it to like Ghostway again, but it's better than Ghostway because you can choose more than just your creatures. You can choose your artifacts, you can choose your enchantments, you can choose your planeswalkers, you can choose a whole bunch of different things, and it just gives you that flexibility that these other cards that see a lot of play don't provide you. And so I am actually pretty high on this card.
Yeah. It is, you always have to be like, it's an all or nothing kind of situation when you want to cast Teferi's Protection. This is so much more like, what's the term? Like, diverse, I guess. Like, this can create some interesting situations, I think.
Yeah, this is a bit more open-ended. It leads to a lot of different types of situations, I feel. And it can lead to, like, I don't know, arguably better stories. Of like, oh, they did this, and then I played Clever Concealment, and then, oh, this happened, then, oh.
Okay, next is Minor Misstep. It's a single blue mana, instant, counter target spell with mana value 1 or less. Alright, so this obviously pays tribute to Mental Misstep, which is a super good blue card. Like, up there in terms of like best counter spells, because it just can hit a lot of things. I mean, Soul Ring being the most played card, 2 mana, free counter spell, done. So I feel like this card has potential to also see a lot of play, is what I'm saying. Oh, 1 or less. Oh, so it could be 0. That's a 1-up, I think, from Mental Misstep. Did I spell mental? I did. I spelled it wrong. Yeah, okay, Mental Misstep is only mana value 1. So this card's a little better.
Yeah, it's a little better in terms of effect. Like, it's hard when, like, a spell is free, like original Mental Misstep is.
That is true.
I feel like this pertains to more of the CEDH, competitive EDH spectrum of the format, where you're trying to go as fast as possible.
Yeah. And
even then, I have not... I try to stay up to date as to like what the CEDH meta, quote unquote, I know there's lots of CEDH metas, but like mostly what the CEDH spectrum is on about, and I still haven't really heard anything definitive about what their thoughts are on this card, because as you said, Mental Misstep is played, but again, that's because it's a free spell. Like 2 life when your starting life total is 40, that's nothing. So I'll say this, in an average, more casual commander game, like you might be able to get someone with this every once in a while, but like you're not going to catch them. Like your ability to stop somebody is going to be much less. And on the CDH end of the spectrum, at time of recording, I still have not heard a whole bunch of people be like, oh wow, this is really gonna replace, like, you know, my Force of Will or my fucking like I don't know, just like the whole spectrum of counterspells that are at that end of the format. So because of that reason, I'm like not so high on this card, even though like at first glance you would think you would be. I also want to clarify, like, Mental Misstep at that end of the format is not going to stop Force of Will, because Force of Will is a 5 mana value card. And so like your opponent may be casting it for free, and you might be thinking, oh, they're casting it for free, that's 0 mana value. No, it is a 5 mana value card. You cannot use Minor Misstep to counter it. And I've seen a number of people already make mistakes with this.
Interesting. Okay. I feel like I haven't seen that, but that is good to bring up. And I can definitely see where you're coming from, because there's another card we're talking about that I kind of feel the same way about. But we'll get there. Do you want to read this next card?
Sure. I'm excited for this one personally, which is Encroaching Mycosynth. It is 3 and a blue for an artifact that says, non-land permanents you control are artifacts in addition to their other types. The same is true for permanent spells you control and non-land permanent cards you own that aren't on the battlefield. So, obviously, by name and by card type, it is an homage to the original, which is Mycosynth Lattice. They are different. At the same time, they're both pretty much artifacts that make all your other permanents artifacts, and that can be very strong for a number of different reasons. Just there's a lot of commander decks that want to make all your permanents artifacts in order to do some real bullshit and synergistic stuff. Now, obviously there's differences, and I'm not going to go into all the minutia, but Encroaching Mycosynth is only 4 mana. It's relatively easy to cast with only 1 blue pip, and it's essentially doing the same core thing which the original Mycosynth is doing, which is turning all your stuff into artifacts. You don't really care so much about the mana fixing from the original Mycosynth. It's just a really cool card, and I'm honestly surprised that they chose to print it, given how the original Mycosynth caused problems for other formats. Yeah.
I'll be interested to... I feel like it's... At least is Mycosynth Lattice as big of a problem in Commander now? I mean, in the right deck. Shit, like, Park plays it, doesn't he?
I don't believe Park plays it in his colorless deck.
Oh, interesting. Okay. No, the card's good.
Yeah, the card's just good. It's just... Like, I know in other formats it's been a problem, and in terms of Commander, it's usually just like, whenever you see Mycosynth played in Commander, you're just like, oh, my opponent's about to do some real fucked up rules shit. Like, I've got to be on my toes. That's usually what it means.
Yeah. Okay. Next is Mind Splice Apparatus. 3 blue, artifact, flash. At the beginning of your upkeep, put an oil counter on Mind Splice. Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each oil counter on Mind Splice Apparatus. Yeah, this is a good card.
It is, because I added this to our notes.
Oh, yes, I agree. I mean, I think the fact that it has flash is what makes it so good to me.
Yes, that was going to be the main linchpin, main thing I was going to say, which is the fact that if this was just like a sorcery speed artifact at 4 mana, like, I would not be as high about it, but the fact that you can cast this at like flash speed, instant speed, totally changes the game. The fact that this is the kind of card you want to play in a control style deck for Commander. And when you're playing control in Commander, you want to do things at instant speed on the end steps of your opponent's turns. You can just go to your turn 4, assuming you haven't ramped, and you can just pass the turn, and if your opponents don't do anything, you can just flash this in an end step, go to your turn 5, like, be ready to, like, at the beginning of your upkeep, put a counter on this, and instantly, all your instants and sorceries, which is probably what your entire deck is, are now just 1 less to cast. And it's just going to keep compounding turn after turn after turn. And it's just going to get better and better as the game goes longer, which is what a control deck wants to do. So just like, imagine, like, even just 3 turns later, all of your instants and sorceries cost 3 less. That's some bullshit. Like, you're just gonna, like, pop the fuck off. And so, again, like, Park's playing this in one of his decks, and I'm just like, oh my god, fucking kill me. Because there have just been so many effects that reduce the amount of generic mana for your instant sorceries throughout the years. Like, there's the classic Brawl Chief of Compliance, which you can play as your commander, but there's also cards in the 99 such as As Foretold. There's the more recent Fort of Magic. There's the more recent Haughty Djinn and the more recent Wizards of Thay. And so there's just been a whole bunch of recent cards within the last like 2 years that have just been like, hey, all of your instant sorceries cost just 1 less, and when you do that multiple times, it's just like, oh shit. Like, control decks have actually been secretly low-key getting a whole bunch of really strong engine cards that reduce their mana cost. Fuck.
Yeah, and I mean, I always like these types of effects more so than like mana rocks, because mana rocks, like, yeah, you get mana for it, but like these type of cards apply to all your spells, or like a specific type of spell, like, so it can compound a lot better than just like a normal mana rock.
Yeah, so the most helpful way and most easy way to comprehend this is just like the medallion cycle.
Yes.
Each of the monocolors has a medallion. Jet Medallion makes all of your black spells cost 1 less. If you've ever played that in a mono black deck, you're just like, wow, this does a whole lot of work, like, generally speaking. And so, like, if you just play the medallions in any monocolor deck, you're just like, holy shit, like, this is almost better than a stereotypical 3 mana or even 2 mana value mana rock that taps for a colored. It's just like, when it's each spell, like, that's actually like a small but important difference.
And I mean, if it can apply to even just more than one spell per your turn, that's already what makes it so good.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's why I added it to our notes. I was kind of high on this. I'm probably going to buy it.
It's a good card. Mm-hmm. Okay, next card.
All right, so next we have Ichor Moon Gauntlet. It is 2 and a blue for an artifact that says Planeswalkers you control have 0 proliferate and -12. Take an extra turn after this one. But wait, there's more. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, choose a counter on target permanent. Put an additional counter of that kind on that permanent. So there's kind of a lot to unpack here. This is arguably a Planeswalker tribal card, a Super Friends card, because it's encouraging you to like play a bunch of Planeswalkers, and it's giving them 2 additional abilities. The fact that there's the 0 proliferate and the -12 take an extra turn after this one. So it sort of reminds me how like Ral Zarek and Teferi Master of Time and Teferi Time Bender are 3 planeswalkers that all have take an extra turn after this one, and that's basically what this artifact is giving them. And it's also giving them the 0 proliferate ability, which is, in my mind, sort of reminiscent of the fairly recently printed Kasmina Enigma Sage, where it's just sort of like giving your planeswalkers a certain ability. I think Kasmina Enigma Sage isn't exactly the 0 proliferate, but it's sort of like the idea of like all of your planeswalker have this generic ability. And so I'm wondering if we're going to see that more and more.
Yeah.
Then there's the second half of this artifact, which is whenever you cast a non-creature spell, like choose a counter on target permanent, put an additional counter of that kind on that permanent. And for me, that's really reminiscent of Flux Channeler, which kind of just says like, oh, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, proliferate, which is slightly different but very similar to this effect. And that card is fucking cracked in the right deck. I am afraid of it every single time I see it. Like, I've only seen it a few times, but it's always in the right deck, and whenever I see it, I'm just like, oh fuck, this thing needs to die, otherwise we're losing the game right now. It's funny to me because only 38 commander cards with proliferate exist as of the time of recording, and like most of them are not efficient or very powerful, but like there's only just a handful that are efficient and powerful, and those are the ones I'm afraid of. And this is now one of those cards.
Yeah, I mean, in a Super Friends deck, you just give everyone the ability to proliferate. That can stack up pretty quickly, because if you're able to proliferate enough to get one planeswalker to go off, you then get to take your extra turn. You do the proliferate thing again, and then you just get there again, and it's like, alright, another turn. Like, this can get out of hand, yes, very easily.
Yep. So for that reason, within that very specific archetype of Super Friends, I want to mention this card.
It's also interesting because, yes, it is kind of the true first Planeswalker tribal cards that I would say that have come out recently. Like, I don't feel like it's a super great supported type of deck always.
It's not. I feel like Planeswalker Tribal, aka Super Friends, has gotten a lot more support, especially with the current state of design where all these Planeswalkers are completed. So it's easier to cast them because they have Phyrexian mana in their mana cost. And then you get this bullshit of Irkamoon like Gauntlet. And so I'm just like, I'm really curious what the future of Super Friends is going to be, because for a long time, it's always one of those archetypes that people talk about but rarely build, just because financially it's kind of difficult to build it. And it's also like less socially acceptable to build it because you often are incentivized to be like Planeswalker / board wipe tribal, and that's not always the most socially acceptable. So I'm wondering if the Super Friends archetype is going to adapt and change over the next, like, I don't know, 2 to 4 years because of the new Planeswalker cards that are coming out that are easier to cast. I'm gonna have to wait and see.
It'll definitely be interesting. Okay, so this next card is kind of the card that I would say I relate to in minor misstep, where you were kind of talking about like the other one will always be better, but it's a cute
Homage.
Callback. Yeah, homage, that's a better word. So we have Synthesis Pod. 3 and 1 Phyrexian mana. Artifact, tap, blue Phyrexian mana, exile spell you control. Target opponent reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a card with mana value equal to 1 plus the exiled spell's mana value. Exile that card, then that player shuffles. You may cast that card exiled without paying its mana cost. So, if you haven't caught on, it's Birthing Pod.
But group hug.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting design, but I feel like people might just like play it because of their love for Birthing Pod, but I don't think it's nearly as good because Birthing Pod just allows you to go get whatever you want. Oh, that is specifically like 1 more mana value, but this is saying like this is a little more like a cascade, like you don't always know what you're gonna get.
Birthing Pod, long history, especially in Modern. You'll see it every once in a while in competitive EDH, and you'll see it every once in a while in casual Commander. Yeah, I feel like this is a really cool homage, but I don't think I'll see it a whole bunch besides decks that are specifically designed to like play their opponent's decks in hopefully a quote-unquote fun way.
Yeah.
Next up, we have All Will Be One. It is 3 red for an enchantment that is very flexible. It says, whenever you put 1 or more counters on a permanent or player, All Will Be One deals that much damage to target opponent, creature an opponent controls, or planeswalker an opponent controls. So it's directly converting like the number of counters you're putting on stuff into damage to pretty much any target you want. And that's a pretty powerful effect, but I feel like it's kind of balanced out by the fact that it's a 5-mana enchantment. What do you think, Guy?
Yes. Otherwise, I think it could go off pretty easily with a few of these cards. Quest for Purifying, Red Terror, War Elemental. Red Terror being a newer card that's a legendary that can sit in your command zone, so these would become 2-card combos. Why is that? Because all these cards essentially put a counter on themselves whenever you deal damage. So you just have to deal damage once, and then this All Will Be One, and those 3 cards will just bounce back and forth and kill you. So it's nice that it's like a good infinite combo for some of these niche cards. But the Red Terror also, like, being a newer commander, and also, I don't know, I feel like Warhammer players are kind of excited for that. Yeah.
Yet to see anyone abuse it, but then again, it only came out like 3 days ago, so all yet to see.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. This next card, I expect to see a whole bunch, though.
Oh yeah. Oh wait, I'm up for reading. Conduit of Worlds, 2 green artifact. You may play lands from your graveyard. Where have these things?
Just stop
before?
there.
Okay.
Oh wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more. Tap. Choose target non-land permanent card in your graveyard. If you haven't cast a spell this turn, you may cast that card. If you do, you can't cast additional spells this turn. Activate only as a sorcery. So yeah, it's another Crucible of Worlds, Ancient Green Warden, Ramunap Excavator, Wayward Swordtooth. But then it's also kind of like a one-time Gaia's Will. Almost.
I mean, sure.
It's a not.
But
yeah.
like, let's be real here. Nobody really cares about the tapped ability. Everyone just cares about the fact that it's another card that lets you play lands from your grave.
That is definitely the most appealing part. Don't get me wrong.
That's a really strong ability in Commander. For those of you who don't know, pretty cracked.
Yeah, I mean, but just the added bonus effect for only 1 more mana. It's like. It's a pretty good bonus effect too, so I mean, this and among, Crucible of Worlds and all those other cards is going to be played a lot.
It's sort of interesting, like, if they just keep printing cards like this, are they going to stop? Because I feel like, Guy, I want your opinion on this. I feel like landfall strategies in Commander are doing just fine. They really didn't really need this kind of effect.
No.
They didn't really need a 5th one.
No.
Like, we were fine with Crucible of Worlds, Ancient Green Warden, Ramunap Excavator, and Wayward Swordtooth.
Yeah,
And so now we have a 5th one, and so now I'm just like, alright, WotC, like, you're doing good. Like, I think we can, because Commander is an eternal format, I think we'd honestly be fine if we never got, I mean this seriously, I think we'd be fine if we never got another you may play lands from your graveyard effect again. Because like we've reached like what's called a quote-unquote critical mass of a certain type of effect. Like, Guy, I don't know if I've ever told you, but like with like my Enchantress deck, I feel like I've reached a critical mass within the color identity that it's in of like playing an enchantment draw card where I'm perfectly content if WotC never prints another Enchantress effect again.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's how I'm feeling. Like, we've reached a critical mass of enchantments within at least the Selesnya color identity, and when it comes to this sort of Crucible of Worlds effect, because that was the first one that was ever printed, we've come to a critical mass of like you may play lands from your graveyard sort of effect in terms of green.
Yes, I agree. Like, there's only, and it's like it can get interesting. Like I think they're trying to make it more interesting, but it still goes back to your point of like, okay, you can make this as interesting as you want any number of times, but there are a limit to like how many times we do actually need this. So I would also be happy if we did not really see this effect get played on any other card.
And to clarify, you can certainly restrict this sort of effect where like you only like let's say like you could only return a forest or something to your hand, but like at least for something this generic, like we're good. We're good, right?
Yeah, because it doesn't even ask you. It kind of going back to like Shieldred does, but like it just already acts upon such a natural game ability that it's like good without needing anything else. So yeah, pretty nice.
Yeah. All right. Why don't you read us the next card?
Oh, but I read the last card.
All right, I'll read it just because I like to. This is Nissa, Ascended Animist. It is 3 green, and then double Phyrexian green. So technically a mana value of 7, and then it comes in with 7 loyalty as a legendary Planeswalker Nissa, with the completed mechanic, obviously. So, +1. Create a XX green Phyrexian Horror creature token where X is Nissa Ascended Animus loyalty. -1. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. -7. Until end of turn, creatures you control get +1/+1 for each forest you control and gain trample. So, I guess you could argue that this is the like the best completed Planeswalker like so far of this set. Guy, I feel like you have stronger opinions about this card than I do.
Yeah, I feel like all the other completed Planeswalkers we've seen have been like meh, and I think we've only really talked about them because they were just interesting and like, you know, they are noteworthy and big story element cards. But this is the first one where I've been like, oh, okay, I could totally see myself running this, just because the fact that it could ultimate right away, and it becomes very close to a second Crater Hoof type effect. Now that is more probably saying that you're running more forest than creatures, but still, I would think in a mono green deck where this would probably go, you're probably got a lot of forests.
Yeah, I mean, definitely stick this in your mono green deck if it works within it, where like you want to create a token, or you want to destroy an artifact or enchantment, or you just want to give that sort of overrun effect. I guess it just depends how much mana you can produce, because again, this is a 7 mana like Planeswalker, which is sort of a high investment.
Yeah, but it could be a game ender too. That's kind of what's nice about the completed Planeswalkers, is like you could pay for them earlier or you could pay for them later and they just get better later on, but they're still like decent. But yeah, I think this one has been the best one we've seen so far.
You're good to read this one?
Yep, so this is Sword of Forge and Frontier. We've seen that before. So this is the next Sword of X and Y. It's a 3 mana artifact equipment, just like all of them. It has equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from red and green. So I think this is probably like the one exception that they're going to like probably bring back protection, just because at this point like all these cards like read so and so is protected from these color combos.
Mm-hmm.
But this one, whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn. You may play an additional land this turn, and its equip cost is 2. So I'd say like this is a fairly decent one among others. Like it's generically good that you get like 2 cards off of hitting someone, and then you can play an additional land. I think the fact that it wouldn't allow you to cast them if oh wait, of your library. Shoot, I read that wrong. I thought it was target player's library. No, this is better. Okay, yeah, this is good.
This is pretty decent for a Sword of X and Y card, simply for the ability that it allows you to play an additional land this turn. because there's a lot of color identities that wish they had that ability, but because of their color identity, they don't have access to that. And so that's a pretty powerful effect, much more than the whole like exiling the top 2 cards of your library sort of effect.
Yeah, because the land doesn't even need to come from those exile the top 2 cards. You can just play an additional land from your own hand still.
And so I think a lot of decks like will want this sword just for the ramp, honestly.
Yeah.
It's sort of like how a lot of people play sort of Feast and Famine just for the fact that it gives you the potential to like untap all your lands so you can like, in theory, like cast twice as much stuff. It's viewed as sort of a ramp spell in sort of combat-centric decks. Yeah, that's where I see it, and I am kind of excited for it.
Yeah. Alright, we got 2 more here.
We just need the Dimir version, and then we're done with the cycle. Alright, moving on. We got Staff of Completion. We have a 3 generic costing artifact that has a whole bunch of tap abilities. Tap, pay 1 life. Destroy target permanent you own. Tap, pay 2 life. Add 1 mana of any color. Tap, pay 3 life. Proliferate. Tap, pay 4 life. Draw a card. 5, untap Staff of Completion. So, for those of you more enfranchised players, this is a pretty close parallel to Staff of Domination, which is this like low costing artifact that has all these tap abilities, and then at the very end it's like pay a certain amount of mana and just untap the artifact, and just like it's a way for you to like do a bunch of infinite combos if you have enough mana. Like that's just what you do. And so now Staff of Completion is sort of here as sort of a counterpart, like an evil counterpart, quote unquote. Because this thing does a whole bunch of stuff. Like you can add a whole bunch of mana, you can proliferate, you can draw a card. It all depends on how much life you have, and depending on like what you're tapping or untapping, like you might be able to gain more life than you're paying with Staff of Completion. So I think this is arguably a more like fixed version of Staff of Domination, but there's definitely ways to abuse this.
The ways are like you have to be in a much heavier life gain themed deck and also get infinite mana to really pop off. Because like the other one just required infinite mana, which is kind of easier to do, but this would require you to get like 50,000 life, then you and infinite mana to like have to do it, because like the only thing that you need the infinite mana for is the untapping part, but like paying life for all these other effects could add up very quickly.
Right, which is why I like Staff of Completion more than the original, just because of what you said, where like all Staff of Domination required, which was like infinite mana, and like you just win the game, whereas this one, it's like, alright, you need at least one more piece to like complete the combo, which I appreciate.
Yeah. Okay, and this last card is Soulless Jailer. 2 mana, artifact creature, Phyrexian Golem. Permanent cards in graveyards can't enter the battlefield. Players can't cast non-creature spells from graveyard or exile, and it's a 0/4. So big butt.
I guess.
Like, do you remember your criticism of this card when you first saw it?
I do not.
You were like, it's like Lava Golem from Yu-Gi-Oh! And like, I can't unsee it. I'm like, yeah, it is.
Okay, I do remember that. I was... yeah. Because I couldn't remember the name of Lava Golem, and I was just like, in our messages, I was like, it's that lava that looks like a golem and it's got cages for hands, and I'm just like, boy.
Oh yeah.
You just named it.
But yeah, this card's still pretty good. Like, I think it's a little more niche in the stacks, and like can be more dependent on your meta, I suppose. Like, if that's kind of how I view it. Like, it's a good card if in the right meta.
I agree with that. It sort of reminds me, the closest comparison I have to my mind is Grafdigger's Cage. And Like, obviously they're different cards, but they're sort of the same idea where, like, here's a low-costing artifact. It's pretty much stopping your opponents from, like, casting bullshit from their grave and casting bullshit directly from their library. But ever since, like, Flash was banned, the kinds of players that would want this type of effect, like, don't really quite need it anymore. They're playing other shit. And so, until Flash is unbanned, which is never going to happen, like, we're probably not going to see Soulless Jailer a whole bunch.
No, it definitely will just be a meta card.
It's very much of a silver bullet type card.
Yes, I agree. Okay, and that kind of rounds it out for our first premiere set of All Will Be One. Definitely some hot talked about cards, and definitely some cards that I think we'll get to see quite a bit of, hopefully.
I feel like we still did a fucking set review just because we're all like an hour and 40 minutes in.
Yeah. Okay, we'll wrap this up pretty quickly. So we got our first RC announcement as well for the year, but no cards were banned, no rules were changed, no cards unbanned. Basically, the main highlights of this is that they did talk about how they didn't talk about Elish Norn, because there was concerns about her being banned from, like, Sheldon's articles, but they said that wasn't even a point of discussion. So the transparency there is nice, that we get to kind of know more about their conversations and was that actually talked about. But it's good that they're not making any kind of rash decisions.
Right, and what's funny to me is the fact that even in Sheldon's article, he's like, hey, I'm the only one that kind of feels this way. All the other RC members do not feel this way. So do not take this as a way that Elish Norn, Mother of Machines, is going to get banned. And everyone's still panicked.
Yeah.
So.
But it's nice of them to reiterate it.
Sure.
Okay, so the other thing is that they did talk about how all the new poison cards are going to maybe affect the format, because there's been call for them to raise the poison counter from 10 to 20. However, they have also said that they are going to stick with 10 as the amount needed to kill someone in Commander, just because none of them seem overly powerful, but we'll, wait and see if this becomes a popular mechanic and it does become an issue. But historically, it hasn't been, so, like, why now? So we'll just have to see.
Right.
But I don't personally foresee it actually happening.
I agree. I don't feel it, like, possibly happening, because I think one of the main things to consider in all of this, as much as people ask for, like, it to be raised, I feel like it's all newer players of the format who haven't seen the whole breadth of strategies that exist in this format, and so they don't realize just how few infect and toxic and poisonous cards there are, and just how difficult that strategy actually is in order to win.
Yeah.
In addition to the fact that it's, when you're making a format, you really do want it to be, like, in parallel with other formats. Like, you don't want it to, like, be the only format where, like, you need 20 or more poison counters to, like, kill an opponent, where all the other formats don't do that. It's just sort of one more barrier to entry for new players. And I think that's something that's not discussed as much as it should be, because it's a really serious factor in the way in which the average player gets into a format. Like, the more barriers to entry there are, the less likely they are to play.
Yeah, when there's changes in comparison, yeah, it can get confusing, because some people might say, like, it is just like all the other formats. Oh, wait, no, it's not. So just being more unified together as a game is for the best.
Yep, and I know the rules committee has made certain decisions because of that very line of logic, so that's why I bring it up.
Yeah, that is a good point.
Yeah, and then lastly, in this rules announcement quarterly update, they did address Dockside Extortionist, where, like, all of 2022 they pretty much talked about Dockside Extortionist and how they've been keeping an eye on it over the year, and it's not until this announcement that they've pretty much said hey, we've kind of come to a conclusion, unless new cards come out that really make it a real problem, it's not enough of a problem in casual pods to ban it, so we're probably not going to ban it. And I'm paraphrasing here because I don't want to read the exact quote, but that's basically what they said. And I kind of agree with it, whereas as annoying as Dockside Extortionist can be sometimes, like, I don't think it needs to be banned. This also comes from me, someone who believes the fewer cards banned, the better the format is, so take that with a grain of salt. Yeah.
No, I agree. Like, it's also a card that definitely has to scale with your table, so it's not always like it can just be a bomb every time. But, like, historically, yeah, you probably are getting something out of it.
Yeah. I mean, last week, you played a Dockside Extortionist where it made 2 treasures, so you were, like, mana neutral?
Yeah, I was like, I'm just gonna do this so I can, like, save mana for the future. Like, it's good in that regard, too, but, like, I was desperate. So, yeah. But okay, so yeah, that wraps it up. Pretty neat stuff, and I personally am pretty excited for the future based on what we just went over. Like, it's another good year and good start to Magic.
I'm optimistic. I feel like just the two of us kind of taking a step back so we don't get burnt out, and just sort of watching the sets come out, especially since, and I don't have any definitive sources on this, but everything that I've seen indicates that Phyrexia All Will Be One is a set that even outpaced Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, which was, from what I've seen, it's outpaced Neon Dynasty, which is saying something because that was one of the most well-received sets of the previous year, and it's only the second month into 2023.
Yeah.
If those sources are true, like, we're starting off the year very strong.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Jeez. I had not heard that, but, like, it wouldn't surprise me considering, like, how popular this plane is and just, like, all the goods we got. I hope we continue to see a trend of starting this strong every year.
Yeah. Also, Guy, I don't know about you, but I am hoping that the storyline, the lore of this timeline continues, in the sense that, I'm actually concerned about the Phyrexians. I'm actually concerned about the Phyrexians taking over all these different worlds, completing all these planeswalkers, especially if this completion process cannot be reversed. Like, if that's the case, like, we've just lost Jace. We've just lost Vraska. We just lost Tamio. We've lost Ajani. Like, we've lost all these beloved characters, and, like, there's actual stakes to the story. And I know this is very divisive amongst the Magic the Gathering community at this time, but for me, personally, I've just been like, wow, like, I cannot get into the Magic the Gathering lore because there's no stakes. Like, whenever someone dies, they, like, pretty much come back, or, like, they hardly ever kill anyone. Like, the War of the Spark killed, like, 2 people, and, like, they were insignificant characters, arguably, and I'm just like, I don't even care. Like, the stakes are so low, and, like, with this current plot line, in theory, the stakes are actually high. I actually care about this. I actually want to know what happens to each of these characters. I don't know if they're just going to retcon it all, where, like, all the completed Planeswalkers in 2026, like, the entire process can be reverted and everyone's back to the way they were and everyone's fine, in which case I'll probably be pissed. But, like, right now, in this current moment, I'm like, oh shit, I'm actually invested in the story. I actually, like, want to know, like, what the stakes are.
I agree. Like, do I love Jace? Yes. Have I seen enough of Jace, though? Yes. So I am fine with them to, like, move on and bring us some more interesting characters. Alright. With that said, we are the Wizard staff. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere else you like to listen to your podcasts. Make sure to leave a like and review. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at WizardStaff101. You can also send us an email at thewizardstaff101@gmail.com if you want to bitch and complain about how stupid we are. We thank you for listening, and we hope you have a great night. Peace out.
Peace.